Mystery and thriller genres have specific expectations, and if you don't meet them, readers are going to put your book down, no matter how good your writing is. My name is Zara, and I'm the founder of Inimitable Books, and today I'm going to be talking about what mystery and thriller readers expect and how to deliver it. You might remember our video about how you need to know your genre in order to find readers. Once you have those readers, you need to satisfy them. Mystery and thriller are different but related genres and have different expectations, although a lot of publisher and retailer websites lump them together. If you understand what each genre promises, you can use that to craft a story that will be satisfying to you. Writers in these genres sometimes focus so much on the reveal that they forget about fair play and proper cluing. I talk about this in our video about plot twists, but you need to make sure that your readers are along for the ride, but don't feel cheated with an answer that came out of nowhere when they finally receive it. And then you have some writers who think that thriller means that there's nonstop action without any understanding of we have an entire video on pacing about why you shouldn't exhaust your readers by never mixing up how fast or slow your story is moving. Have you ever read a mystery where the detective solves a crime through information that readers never received, or read a thriller where the protagonist survives through luck instead of skill? Or maybe you've read a book in mystery, thriller, or a different genre where the pacing just drags in the wrong places and then moves too fast in others where readers can't keep up. None of these types of books are fun to read, so let's talk about how to avoid these mistakes by knowing what you should be doing in the first. Like I said before, mystery and thriller are often lumped together as genres, but they create tension in different ways. And while mystery is its own genre, you can also have a mystery within a book of a different genre. For example, Down the Well by Veronica King, which was named a distinguished favorite by the Independent Press Award in 2025, and her middle grade book, From the Diary of Agnes Yeager, The Secrets of Silverleaf Academy, both have mysteries within them. The first asks who killed the mayor of Thimbleton, and the second asks what happened to Bellamy. Mystery novels are focusing on the puzzle, who done it, how done it, and why done it. There's emphasis on solving the puzzle and crime. On the thriller side of things, Inimitable Books is kicking off 2026 with 3 different publications. Grandma's Little Secret by Becca C. Smith, where we have the main character racing against time to save her grandfather from being murdered. By Chandra Arthur, where the heroine is regularly in life or death situations, although she is normally the one who is doling out the death. Eventually, she is in a dangerous situation herself, where her survival is not guaranteed. Thanks for watching by Kate Kavanaugh, where you have a group of influencers who eventually start living in fear once they realize that the brand trip they were invited on was merely a ruse for a killer to start picking them off one by one. Thrillers are focusing on the chase. A protagonist is racing against time. Readers know that the protagonist might be in danger in ways that the protagonist doesn't even realize yet. And thanks for watching. Readers know from the book description the trip is a ruse from the very beginning, but the characters don't. You have action-driven scenes with life or death stakes, and the emphasis is on suspense because the crime or danger is still happening. It's not in the past like it is for a mystery. You can absolutely blend these genres. I mentioned in a previous video, The Closer Look has an amazing video about how Knives has a genre flip in the middle of it. But a rule of thumb that you can keep in mind is that mysteries are about untangling the past, while thrillers are about surviving the present and future. In a mystery, the crime has presumably already happened. Maybe there is a serial killer, in which case there are future crimes as well. But the thriller genre is all about the still looming and or currently happening danger. They both have tension, but they are different kinds. Understanding this difference will help you structure your plot effectively, pace your reveals, and deliver an experience your target readers want. Mystery readers expect fair play. You need to give the ability to solve the mystery themselves. If they're clever enough, you can't have an answer come out of left field. It's not fair to them, and they're going to feel cheated. You need to have all clues available to the detective are available to the reader. The solution should be possible to figure out, but not too obvious. No crucial evidence can appear out of nowhere, especially as a last-ditch effort to make everything make sense. And the detective should not be solving the crime through lucky guesses. They might have a lucky hunch, but then it needs to be backed up by evidence that then allows them to solve the crime. It can't only be. Of course, you don't want to make solving your mystery easy. You can hide clues in plain sight, use red herrings, misdirect their attention, and have multiple valid interpretations of evidence, all of which can allow your readers to speculate so they don't get to the end point too quickly. You need to start planting your clues early, and you need to make them so readers can piece the puzzle together slowly. Here's what fair play looks like in practice. Let's say the solution involves being left-handed. You can't just reveal that in the final chapter without mentioning it before. You need to establish that earlier than the final reveal. In an old crime show that I used to love, there was an episode where someone was stabbed. By the angle of the incision, the medical examiner was able to determine that the killer was likely left-handed. Now, they were not able to say 100%, but they told the investigators when the investigators were interviewing suspects, they were able to pay attention to things like the fact that one person wore a watch on their left wrist like most right-handed people. So they probably weren't the killer. But they also noticed that someone else had left-handed golf clubs. For a book, you want to be less heavy-handed in pursuing a certain clue once you lay the foundation for it, because you don't want people to say, that's a really important clue, I'm going to pay attention to that the whole time. But remember, it is not fair play to reveal crucial information at the very end without making it available to readers earlier so that they could have their own crack at it. Readers need to have access to the same information as the detective roughly at the same time. You can delay reveals for pacing, but you can't withhold it until the very last minute, just to build to a moment of surprise. A lot of stories have ticking clocks to create tension and suspense, but thrillers need urgency and something to force the protagonist to act now rather than later. Here are some types of ticking clocks. There's the literal countdown. It might be a bomb that has a counter. It might be a deadline, or there could be escalation where things are getting worse and you don't want it to continue on that path. There could be limited resources, running out of time, money, allies, etc. Or a deteriorating situation where each moment that passes makes success less likely. You can combine a bunch of these aspects together, but those are some rough categories that you can think of. Grandma's Little Secret has limited resources because Emma is running out of time to save her grandfather. Mother Mercy has a deteriorating situation because the longer that the main character, Abby, lets crimes go unpunished, the worse the innocent victims are suffering. And Thanks for Watching has escalation because the killer is racking up a body count and you don't want to be the next person who meets an early end. The ticking clock, whether literal or not, creates thriller's signature tension. And without it, your protagonist could take their time, plan carefully, avoid danger, or not participate at all of which will kill the suspense you are trying to create. But if readers are still thinking, why don't they just wait it out, then your ticking clock is not urgent. And as your story progresses, the pressure needs to increase. Complications arise, deadlines move closer by the natural passage of time or someone changing the rules on your characters. You need to establish what that ticking clock is early and then make it clear what the consequences are. If time runs out, and protagonists should constantly feel forced to make harder choices faster. Let's talk about suspense versus surprise. Understanding the difference between the two will help you control tension for your readers and your story. Surprise is essentially a jump scare. Readers don't know that something is coming and then it suddenly happens. I don't particularly love this in movies, and I also don't love it when it shows up too often in a story through the written word either. But I think it can be effective when it's used sparingly. For example, you have a character who might be opening a closet simply to get a toothbrush or a towel or a change of clothes, and instead they find a dead body inside. The TV show that I mentioned earlier used this to open almost every single episode of theirs where someone discovers a dead body and screams. Then you have suspense. Readers know that something is coming and they are dreading it if you've done your job correctly. For example, readers might know that the dead body is in the closet while the character is approaching, and they are waiting for the character's reaction. Show readers the ticking clock. Show them the bomb under the table and watch characters have an innocent conversation above it. That also can go into Chekhov's gun, which is where if you introduce an element then it needs to come back later. In thrillers, the tension for readers comes from knowing that something bad is going to happen, but not knowing how or exactly when. In mysteries, readers know something is wrong, but maybe not what, and definitely not why. And if you use both, then you are creating a great story with depth, good tension, and mystery that keeps readers engaged. I think the best books use elements of mystery and thrillers throughout them, and I believe the same for mysteries and thrillers. If you have a mystery with no tension, other than some curiosity of what happened, you're not going to have readers reading until the end of your book. They might look up a summary and see the spoiler of who did it. You don't want that to happen. And if you have a thriller where it is only about life or death situations without any mysteries that need to be solved along the way, then your character's ability to solve their problem might be easier if they don't have unknowns that take time to solve. Balance is key. Too much surprise without suspense makes your story feel random and exhausting, but too much suspense without any surprise makes your story feel predictable. In mysteries, we have red herrings. You need to make them convincing enough to mislead your readers, but fair enough that readers don't feel upset once they realize they were going down the wrong path. They need to think that was clever on the part of the writer, not this was clearly the villain and they decided at the last minute that it was someone else. In the TV episode I referenced earlier about a left-handed villain, there is a third suspect that I didn't mention who is left-handed, has a motive, but ultimately isn't the killer. However, they serve as a good red herring for about half, if not 3/4 of the episode, which is great for tension. So your red herrings need to be plausible. They have motivation and opportunity. It's not something that can easily be dismissed. Their suspicious behavior has a real explanation. Clues point to them are ambiguous enough to also apply to the real villain, and they serve the story beyond just misdirection. If they're only there as a red herring, then the character is probably flat, and that's not great. You can't have your red herring exist hinging on the fact that characters are going to withhold information for no reason, and they also should not disappear once they're cleared. Like I said, they need to have a purpose beyond just being a red herring, and their behavior needs to make sense in retrospect. Remember, the best red herrings are characters who could have done the crime and have reasons for their suspicious behavior, but ultimately didn't do the thing that you're investigating. They might have done other bad things, but when revealed, readers are going to think, that makes sense, not that was pointless. And you also don't want to overuse red herrings, because if everything is a red herring except the actual villain, then it's going to feel overwhelming to your reader or make them numb to your story. Let's talk about how you are resolving a thriller or mystery. How you do it is crucial. A mystery reader needs to see everything come together. If you've ever read an Agatha Christie novel or seen a Knives Out Benoit Blanc mystery film, then you know that these types of stories normally end with a tell-all by the detective. These can very quickly fall into info dump territory, so be careful when you are creating this part of your story. But this is the part of the story where readers are methodically seeing all aspects of the mystery coalesce into a cohesive picture that should be satisfying to them based on the clues that you've left and the story you've been telling up until that. The walkthrough needs to be logical and call back to the clues while also showing how they fit together. It needs to explain the culprit's motivation and their method and feel like the natural conclusion of the investigation. Again, you don't want it to rely on lucky guesses or coincidence, on information that is introduced at the very last second, or on information that is introduced at the very last second or is so complex that readers can't follow. You also don't want it to leave major questions unanswered. It should feel like you've wrapped up the story in a neat bow. The resolution for a thriller needs to show your protagonist using skills and knowledge that they've developed over the course of the story to survive whatever danger they're up against. Both genres need satisfying endings and answers to questions that have been raised throughout the story. I talk about this in our video about satisfying endings, so be sure to check that out when you're done with this one. But the questions are different. Like I said, mysteries are about the who done it, why done it, and how done it, and the thriller genre is much more about will they survive. And remember, for mysteries, the reveal needs to be surprising, so it doesn't feel like we saw that coming from a mile away, but it also needs to be inevitable. Here are some mistakes to avoid in your mystery or thriller. You don't want your mystery detective to be solely reactive and solely passive. If they're not actively investigating and are only stumbling across clues by accident, that's boring. It feels buffoonish, and isn't enjoyable to read. Your detective needs to have theories, test them out, review them based on new evidence, and they should be making mistakes and learning from them as they go. An investigation is not a straight line, at least for an enjoyable mystery, and it needs to challenge your detective to use analytical skills and persist. For thrillers, you don't want to have only action and no character development. Like I said, the ending of that type of story needs to have your character surviving because of the character growth that they've gone through the book. So if there is no character development, then what do they have to pull from? Also, in general, you want your readers to be able to understand and see a character arc happen, and I have a whole video on that, so you can watch that later. For both mystery and thriller, a mistake is to withhold information from your reader that your point of view character knows. If the head that your reader is in is willfully withholding information, then that's not fair play. You can have characters notice things without immediately understanding their significance, but a point of view character should not be hiding secrets from the reader. Confusing red herrings and subplots to the point of incoherency. Complexity is good, confusion is not. Readers should be able to follow the logic of your story, whether it's a mystery or a thriller. If your plot is so complicated that readers need a flow chart to understand it, then that needs to be fixed. If your reveals contradict established information or rely on impossible coincidences, that's also a problem. A twisty plot should make readers think, I didn't see that coming, but they also need to be thinking, but it makes perfect sense. And be aware of pacing problems. Mysteries can get bogged down in irrelevant or red herring details to the point that they feel like molasses. Thrillers can feel like you are on a roller coaster with no end in sight because it is go, go, go without any breaks, moments of self-reflection or character development. You need forward momentum in both, but you need to remember that readers like variation, and variation is the spice of life. Also, if tension is always high, you're not giving yourself the opportunity to release it strategically and then rebuilding it even higher. So here's your checklist if you are writing a mystery. Have you planted all your clues fairly? Are they present early enough to not feel coincident right before the reveal? Are they noticeable enough that a keen-eyed reader can pick them up, but not everyone will? And can readers theoretically solve the crime? Give your book to a beta reader and see what their reaction is. If they say that there is no way they ever could have solved it, that could just be them as an individual, but this is why you normally have multiple beta readers. If they all say that, then you have a problem. If a few say that they solved it and some say they don't, then you're probably, is your detective active? If you have your clues as a list during the last test, see how many your detective accidentally stumbles upon versus how many they go out and find. You need to lean more towards them actively finding them than just having them fall into their lap. Does it make sense who did what and why? For thrillers, is there tension throughout the story? Does it escalate? Do things get worse? Do your characters make more desperate decisions as they run out of time? And do you make clear what will happen? And do you make clear what will happen if your character fails? Are the consequences clear and compelling? If this video helped, please subscribe to this channel and like the video, but also check out our Inimitable Writing Community's course, Query Ready, which guides authors on how to pick the right genre for their manuscript, query agents effectively, but also how to revise their story so they are putting their best foot forward. Membership includes Q&As with me and also sometimes with special guests like 2 literary agents who will be returning this month to answer more questions. Links are below in the description, and until next time, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.